Well, Glenn, what do you make of all that?
Yeah, it was a long interview, wasn't it? It was a good one. I think what he's not saying anything that he hasn't said to Daniel Levy or Enoch, for sure.
Well, what's his message?
His message is that he feels as if he's getting a foundation, but to go to the next level and be consistent and be in the top 4 every year over a period of time and win something, he needs more money. He needs to get a couple of top players. He's got a couple of top players. They weren't there today, Kane and Son. They went missing, and they very rarely go missing together. One always might have played poorly, but not both together. I think he's frustrated, but I think he's trying to say to people, look, there's a 7 or 8 players here that I can build on, but it's not a finished article. And the problem is for Tottenham, are they really going to give him a lot of money to go and get a couple of really special players if he's not going to sign a contract? So that is a real chicken and the egg. Who's going to go first? If he signs a contract, is Daniel Levy going to go, right, now then we'll give you the money? And now they got to start planning for that anyway, whether it's for the January or the summer. But you can't do that if the manager's going to leave. You know, the process, what he talks about, the project, he hasn't really had that at any club, if I'm really frank. He's been there for a short period of time and he moves on for whatever reason. So it sounded like he wanted to stay. He wants to have that backing. He can see a vision for the team, but he's frustrated because he's thinking, we've done miracles to get into let's take your mind back. Núñez was sacked. Spurs going into the Champions League, the top 4 then. No, they weren't. No chance. Way off it. They got in there and they're in it. And this is where he's right when it says it's such a tough league. You've got Chelsea, you've got Tottenham, you've got Liverpool in the Champions League this year. They're not even in the top 4 of this tough Premier League. That shows you how tough it is. So I think he feels as if he's trying to build something, but he needs, he's sort of one hand behind his back. He knows what he wants. He knows what can happen if they back him. But it's a real problem for Daniel Levy. I wouldn't blame him to say, hang on a minute, you sign and we'll back you. Tell us the players you want. So there's a real sort of conundrum there. I don't know what goes first, whether Daniel gives him that money. Why would you give that money to a manager that could easily walk at the end of the season? Very difficult.
Yes, it is a difficult one. I think that's the biggest thing. I think the most important person at Tottenham is the manager, Antonio Conte. Now, if he's willing to sign a contract long term and then they can back him, then I think he rightly so. If he goes into the board and says, I need some money to spend after signing the contract and they don't do it, then that's the board's fault. Then the fans have a right to be unhappy with them. But if Antonio and Conte won't kind of lay down his future for the club, he can't expect to get the funds as well at the same time. So I think if he sorts his own future out first, one way or the other, then we'll have an understanding. But yeah, I still think Spurs they've still got good quality players in their squad. And once they get players back from injury, I think they will be better. But they're in a rotten run of form. Not even rotten, but they're in a bad run of form at the minute. And today's kind of performance doesn't help. But I think Antonio Conte at some stage has to look at himself and go, well, I'm either committed to Tottenham Football Club or I'm not.
As you just said that, Darren, I'm just thinking it could be a good performance for him. Could be the very moment that he says, look, we're not good enough. This proves we're not good enough. If those 2 guys, Kane and Son, don't play well, you see out 70% of our team goes out the window. So we're not good enough. I'll sign the contract. You give me the money because I feel we can take this squad of players somewhere where there hasn't been for a long time. So maybe under Poch they did. So I think it might be a good example if he sits down this week and says, but he's got to be open enough to say, I will sign. You make sure you're going to back me. What are you going to back me with? I want 2 special players. And I think he's talking about a midfield player there.
Well, he just said we have no creative players in our team.
I think he's on about getting a midfield player that can be really creative. When Harry Kane doesn't have to drop in, he can stay up there and finish even more chances off. It could be a performance that, hey, listen, if Spurs fans are not going to be happy, they've lost at home to Villa. But I'm just saying it could be the crossroads to say, come on, we got to sit down. Where's the club going now? I believe, blah, blah, blah. We can take them to another level if you back me. We've got the foundation there, but we're not the finished article. I think that's what he's saying. But they've got to communicate. And the moment is now, whilst the window's open. Very tough to get the right people in January. But then if he signs, he signs a lengthy whatever contract's going to take him after the summer. I do still believe he probably needs 2 windows.
And the other side, of course, if it's a player, some players will say, well, hang on, who's my manager going to be? If Tottenham come in for you, is he staying? Is he going to get money? Is the squad going to be backed? Are we really serious in this charge towards the Champions League places?
Well, that's a big question, as you said, because that's what I was thinking right then. It was like, if I'm a player going into that football club, yeah, it's a fantastic football club, but you want a bit of clarity. Who is going to be the manager? You want to sign for Antonio Conte because the guy's a serial winner.
Because some players do that, don't they?
Exactly. You look at the manager and you think, well, we've got an unbelievable opportunity of winning something with Antonio Conte in charge. But are you going to be there in 3-4 months' time, or is it going to be a new manager coming in? So I need to kind of know what you're doing first. If you are telling me that you're here for the long term, then of course I'd love to come and play with you. But if you're telling me you don't know what you're doing with your future, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to commit myself to that.
And the example,
I was a bit like that this season. If Glenn wasn't in the studio, that would be gone.
An example of that, Steve, under different circumstances, is Aubameyang and Tuchel.
Yeah.
Tuchel, he's worked with him.
He didn't sign for Chelsea, did he? He signed for Tuchel.
He signed because he was enticed with a man. I've worked with you before. He knows me, blah, blah, blah. He's gone to Chelsea and he's gone. And now you're not seeing the best of Aubameyang for whatever reason. There's a big reason, I think, and that's because Tuchel left. So that could be very much in people's minds. I'm not going to commit to come to Tottenham, even if you're a really top player, because I don't know if the manager's going to be there at the end of the season. So there's so many different, scenarios.
It's a huge conversation either way, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's massive as well, and also as well, quickly, you've got to look at what's going on around him as well, because he's trying to build Tottenham. He sees what's happening in Arsenal, where they're going with their signings. Newcastle, all of a sudden, they're not slowing down. They're going to go again in January. So he's looking at all these people around him, these competitors, where he's thinking, well, we finished above Newcastle and Arsenal last season. This is the time to put your foot on the accelerator, get some signings, and let's start motoring away. But you see, Arsenal have gone past you, Newcastle have gone past you. I think if he sorts out his future first, I think they have to back him.
Yeah, and Chelsea just spent 250 million. Manchester United over 150 million. Arsenal over 150 million. He's looking round. Liverpool have just invested in Gakpo. Everybody else seems to be doing business.
Yeah. If he doesn't sign a contract, let's say that, and they have to get somebody new in it, whether it's Pochettino or whoever it may be, that new manager is going to want some money spent anyway.
Yeah.
So you're in a sort of strong position now as a team playing under a certain... Not every Spurs fan likes the tactics that Conte... What he's trying to say is, this: I'm doing the best with what I've got at this moment in time. If we've got a basis, we've got the foundation. If you get a couple of the players to add to it, real top players...
When you see the players he's brought in so far, have you any issue with them? Would you trust him to invest if that funds were there?
I think when you look at the players, when you see Basuma at Brighton, he was outstanding for Brighton. There's more to come from that lad, no doubt about it. We don't know, look at the quality of Richarlison, what he did in the World Cup. He'll come back even with more confidence. Romero speaks for itself. Bentancur's been good. Perisic, experience. Kulusevski's been they're not all worked out fantastic. We haven't seen Spence. I don't know if Spence can do it in a Tottenham shirt or not yet. The question is not a question because we don't know. He's not been given a chance. So, most of them have worked out. They're not bad buys, in my opinion. What he's saying is to go to the next level. Today, that team at Tottenham that come off the pitch after 90 minutes was just unrecognisable to any Tottenham fan. The personnel that was on there, it was a strange scenario. And I think he's chosen this moment. This is what I'm saying. That moment to have 6-minute conversation, and he's gone on and on. He's been open enough to say nothing he hasn't said to Daniel Levy in the club. But I think
he's talking to the fans.
He's looking to the fans. He's talking to the owners. He's talking to Daniel. He's talking to. This is my moment where I'm saying we ain't good enough. I've known this for quite some time. If you back me, but it comes back to. He's got to sign first. He's got to sign with an assurance that then he's going to get an amount of money. They haven't sold the rights yet to the stadium.
No.
If they do that, that's going to be a big check. That stadium makes a lot of money week in and week out.
Which way would your gut feeling be at the moment, whether he's in charge next season or not?
I can't see him signing a new contract.
No,
I can't. For whatever reason, it's almost a little bit of stubbornness that he wants to be back first before he signs the contract. But Daniel Levy's shown already before that's not going to happen. So I think if he signs the contract, all this gets put to bed tonight. But the fact he doesn't sign a contract, that's why it keeps rumbling on.
It's down to him whether he signs. I mean, there's other scenarios that come into it without going into... he hasn't got a house here. I think the family's still in Italy. He's still living, in a hotel, I believe. So all them scenarios come into it. He's a human being first, and not just a football manager, or that takes over your life. So there's a load of other scenarios why he perhaps hasn't signed. And if that's the case, then he needs to be honest and say to Daniel Levy, I'm not going to sign, and then they can make the decision what they need to make then.
We will watch this space. Thank you very much indeed for your company.